what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, let me begin by asking you, a pretty nice forecast coming up. What are you planning on going out tomorrow night as for Halloween?
Probably
Jean-Yves Duclos, maybe? Or
do I do what, sir?
Jean-Yves Duclos, perhaps?
Jean-Yves Duclos.
It scares Jean-François Robert.
I listened to that interview you did with him, and I got to tell you, I've been on this show for more than 10 years. I think that's the longest you've ever interviewed a federal cabinet minister who didn't break into giggles as he was talking to you. Because basically, Monsieur Duclos has been having so much fun at the expense of the Legault government and Jean-François Robert, you know, with his little mischievous letter that he sent on Friday to Robert, and just happened to get a copy of what just happened to land in the hands of the First Canadiens. $750 million bucks a year, to teach French to all these immigrants. And we're not seeing that money being spent. In fact, we're discovering that they're laying off teachers and they're shutting down French classes. Something doesn't seem to work here. And he kept saying, most disingenuously, they're just, we have to look at the numbers. We have to figure out what's going on. He knows what's going on because the people in Quebec, the government that keeps melting off about how essential it is, how job one, the primary directive is the protection and promotion of the French language, is in fact the last thing on earth that they want to do when they have an $11 billion deficit. So yeah, you're 100% right. The money comes in from Ottawa, and theoretically for A, B, and C, but it's always been the Quebec government that turns around, no, we're going to spend it on D, E, and F. So yeah, I like to think that they're spending it on education. I like to think that they're spending it on housing, but who knows what they're spending it on. Clearly, they're not spending it on French lessons for these immigrants that apparently it's essential to integrate in Quebec society, unless, of course, maybe it isn't as essential as Francois Legault would like us to believe.
So, Jim, help me out here. As I said to the minister, what's the sense of doing this when you know that Quebec's answer will be basically to thumb their nose at the feds and say, mind your own business, we don't care, we'll do whatever we want to do with the money you give us?
Yeah, but whether you speak English or French, whether you listen to CJAD or a French language station, the fact of the matter is, the government's saying, the Legault government is saying one thing out of one side of its mouth and doing something else out of the other side of its mouth. The numbers from Quebec are indefensible. Laying off teachers who teach French, shutting down French language classes while you are huffing and puffing every other minute about how essential, how crucial it is to protect the French language and to integrate new arrivals into Quebec society. You can't say one thing and do the other, and that's why you have not a junior minister. I mean, Mr. Duclos is pretty high up on the food chain in the federal government. He comes on the show and he's just, you could almost hear him scratching his head. I don't understand what's going on. We're giving him $750 million a year. The entire budget of Roberge's ministry is about $470 million. So they're drowning them in money, and all of a sudden they're pleading poor. Il y a quelque chose qui marche pas dans le décor there, Aaron. And he's making it clear that they know, and he's making it clear the public knows. So now, who is not going to take this ball and run with it the next time Francois Legault wants to melt off about language or integrating immigrants?
Fair enough. All right, let me move on to this other story. Quebec Liberals, you say, catching up with Montreal Now in electric vehicles. What's this about?
As it should be, Aaron, because this is a groundbreaking, trailblazing show. You and I have been waxing poetic about how this idea, this 2035 deadline, we're not going to be selling gas cars. Everything will be electric, and George Jetson will be your insurance agent. Everything's going to be fine. No. The Liberals, buttressed, of course, with a poll that was conducted by Cogeco, found that 54% of respondents don't agree with the deadline of 2035. They don't feel it's realistic. The Liberals have finally come out and said, no, you're going way too fast, as if anybody with eyes in their head couldn't have figured that out just by looking at the whole situation, looking around them, seeing how those dark blue license plates still outnumber the hell out of the pale green license plates, how I'm not tripping over as many recharging stations as I am gas stations. It is just hot air. It's tree hugging, virtue signaling, a la Legault, the same way Trudeau does all the time as well. Oh, we're going to have this target here. You're not going to make your target because everyone's driving a car. And what's better is Quebec still is in the forefront of buying the big gas guzzlers, of buying the big F-150s and the SUVs. So please spare me 2035, not like Francois Legault, or I think any vestige of a cat will still be around in 2035. But let's stop the dog and pony show now and try and be realistic, because things do have to change. But let's make them change in a manner that we know we can pull off, as opposed to a manner that's going to make a bunch of overpaid bureaucrats standing behind you at the next press conference nod their heads and say, oh, good job, Minister. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, although I think maybe we can agree, Jim, that, this whole idea when it came out was basically there to say, look, our heart's in the right place. This is what we're going to do, with really no intention of ever going ahead and saying we're going to mandate this to happen.
But Aaron, this is the thing. Just because they do it doesn't mean you can let them get away with it. I know you're right. You said the same thing about the funding for French language courses. You can't turn around and do this every day. My job description is telling people you can't get away with it. So frankly, if Francois Legault wants to blow smoke about electrifying Quebec and its transportation grid, you know what, Monsieur Legault, you're not going to get away with it. And Monsieur Legault, Monsieur Robert, you're not going to get away with creating this illusion that you care a rat's fuzzy butt about integrating immigrants. Immigrants are, as far as you're concerned, are a very handy scapegoat and not good for much else. And if it's not them, it's Ottawa's fault. And that's what they're saying. Oh, it's Ottawa's fault that we have to spend this money, although he won't give us details. This, in any other jurisdiction, Aaron, people's heads would be exploding when $750 million a year kind of goes missing. But here it seems to be another day at the office.
But, Jim, that's that old story, right? It's like everything else that comes up in Quebec City when you talk about not getting away with it. You have the opposition can get up and, yell till you're blue in the face. End of the day, it's a majority government, just like they shut down the debate, or at least the opposition motions, on funding of private schools. Where does this go? Where's the opposition on this? The
opposition is going to have to, like the rest of us, I guess, be patient for the next almost 2 years.
And that's the problem.
Until the election. But you know what? Here I am. Let me be very, very, idealistic and starry-eyed. Maybe the Quebec electorate is going to figure out that when you give a supermajority to a government that basically has normalized discrimination, to a government that has basically, scribbled its legislative agenda on a series of cocktail napkins, maybe you should make a more informed choice the next time around, rather than saying, well, he's not A and he's not B, so I'm going to vote for C, because that's exactly what happened in Quebec. And I could say, if it happened just in 2018 and we learned our lesson, we could say, okay, fine. No, it happened twice in a row. So let's hope it doesn't happen 3 times in a row. I got my fingers crossed here. But in the meantime, in my effort to make sure it doesn't happen 3 times in a row, is making sure every single chance I get, which is often, to point out how often this government does one thing and says another.
Jim, I just want to check before we go any further here. Did the federal government fall today? I haven't been paying attention.
Neither have I, but I got, the simplest way to look at this is, folks, there are 3 opposition parties ranged against the Trudeau government. Unless those 3 parties work at once to vote against the government, nothing, zero, nada is going to happen. So it doesn't matter if Yves-François Blanchet of the Bloc says, well, I'm going to make the government fall, or Pierre Poilievre says, I'm going to make the government fall, or even Jagmeet Singh says, I'm not going to support the government. It doesn't matter. When those 3 guys show up at the same press conference and say, we're going to make the government fall, start sweating. But until then, they're just sucking up oxygen for nothing.
All right. I want to get to the last thing, which was our question of the day, which I'm going to come back to in a second here. This decision by Valerie Plante to take down that artwork in the new Montreal City Hall just because a woman has, it's a pencil sketch, by the way, or kind of, a woman is wearing a hijab. I was kind of, you know what, to be honest, Jim, I'm thinking, is this the biggest issue we have to deal with at City Hall? This seems to me so giant overreach here for something that most people could care less about. What do you think? It's the
hottest item in Quebec media right now. I mean, the fact that we're talking about Bedford School, and we still don't know what happened at Bedford School, but guess what? Yeah, but there's some kind of a Muslim thing going on there. That's it's not secularism. They're going after Quebec's secular nature, even though the premier is turning around saying, you know what, we should still keep funding Catholic heritage schools. Give me a break. But right now, because the biggest media conglomerate in this province has been cheerleading quite shamelessly for Francois Legault's government since they got in. And a lot of people, I think, are following suit on that. They're, you know how this job works, Aaron. It's follow the leader in many cases. Everyone's looking at this as a number one issue, secularism. So you've got Valerie Plante with a straight face saying, well, it is a secular society. And, people were uncomfortable with it, so we got rid of it. I think if it wasn't for the fact it was being covered, most people would have no clue of what's going on, simply because as someone who spent about 15 years of his life covering City Hall, if 0.5% of the entire population of Montreal ever set foot inside of Montreal City Hall, this would have been an issue. But the fact of the matter is, it isn't. It was amplified by the media. It was amplified by, how can I put it, commentators who really have a vested interest in echoing Francois Legault's message that you are under attack from everything and I'm the only guy who can save you, and that's where we are.
So your take on this, Jim, because I want to use this to get into a question. Was it a complete unnecessary action to go ahead and talk about this?
Absolutely, because if it felt that way, it never should have been up there in the first place.
Okay, there you go. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
The man.